to go red. Cool. All right, guys. So we're going to go over the practice quiz right now. Okay, so here we go. A tree farmer hires a botanist to evaluate a blight, which is kind of like a tree fungus infection thing, whatever, that seems to be affecting his trees. The trees are planted in horizontal rows on a hill, and the blight seems to be a bigger problem near the bottom of the hill. The farmer wants to know the extent of the damage to the trees. Since the trees must be destroyed to examine them, the botanist doesn't have time to examine all the trees, so she will select a sample. Several plans for choosing the sample are proposed. Name the sampling strategy in each. Okay, so there's 4 strategies. Randomly select 3 trees from each horizontal row. Lay out a grid on a map of the hill. Randomly select 8 squares from the grid and check all the trees in those squares. Randomly pick a number from 1 to 30. Start at the tree at that position in the first row, then to go to every 30th tree after that. And check the 10 trees closest to the parking lot where the botanist parks her car. Okay, so they gave us 4 different options of how to do a sample. So we're going to go through one by one and let's see what we can see. All right, this first one says randomly select 3 trees from each horizontal row. To me, that sounds like they're taking every row as a group, okay, as a strata. And then out of that strata, they're doing a simple, like an SRS, like a simple random thing, like drawing names out of a hat, right? They're just going to select 3 random trees from each row. To me, that looks like a stratified sample, okay? I'm just going to write stratified. You guys know stratified means the stratified sample, right? Okay. Oh, come on, silly thing. I thought the focus was locked in. I apologize, you guys. Okay. All right, so lay out a grid on a map of the hill, randomly select 8 squares from the grid, and check all the trees in those squares. So lay out a grid on the map. So they do these little groups, right? There's the grid, and then randomly select 8 squares from the grid, and then check all the trees in those squares. So when I see that thing about checking all the trees in those squares, that's a small census put into a randomness thing that was put from some other system in place with a grid, right? It's like all these layers to it. When you see layers like that, it's kind of like they did a stratified sample, but it's more advanced. We call that a cluster sample. And the big thing about the cluster sample, it's like this like layer and a layer, but one of the ways to describe a cluster sample, okay, the thing they all have in common is that once you get down to a small group or whatever, you do all of those things in that small group, okay? You do a census within that small group, okay? So that's going to be a cluster. Okay. Or a cluster sample. One more time. The reason why this one's different than the first one is it's not just because, well, there are added layers to just one, not just one grouping, but it's kind of like 2 sets of grouping, okay, where you cluster them into smaller, like it's like a subgroup of your subgroups. And then in that sub of a subgroup where you do everything inside that subgroup, that's basically the definition of a cluster sample, okay? All right, because remember, a census is really hard to do with everything, but if you have a subgroup and then you have subgroups of those subgroups, it just makes it easier because you're dealing with a smaller population. All right, C, randomly pick a number from 1 to 30. Start at the tree at that position in the first row, and then go to every 30th tree after that. That sounds like they made a system, right? I'm going to, pick a number from 1 to 30. Let's say 15, okay, or 20 or 17. I don't know, like just pick it randomly, okay? Then once you're at that tree, go up 30 trees, do that sample. 30 trees, sample. 30 trees, sample. That's very systematic, so we call it a systematic sample. Okay. Okay, the last part here says check the 10 trees closest to the parking lot where the botanist parks her car. That sounds pretty convenient to me, right? Okay. So one that wasn't on here was a straight simple random strategy. Okay. So just know that on your quiz, you might actually see other answer choices. Okay. Like I would not rule out an SRS, a simple random survey. Okay, if it's just a simple one would be give each tree a number and then randomly draw like 10 trees or 15 trees or something like that randomly. Okay, like kind of like pulling names out of a hat. Okay, like some sort of like a lottery system, something where every tree has an equal chance to be selected. Okay, that would be a simple one. All right. Whoa, did I spell? What the heck did I spell there? All right. Convenient or convenience. That's the word there. I, I missed like the whole middle part of that word. Okay, moving on. Question 2 says, explain what the last plan suggested above. So explain why the last plan suggested above, selecting the 10 trees closest to the parking lot, might be biased. Be sure to name the kind or kinds of bias you describe and link it to the variable of interest. Okay, so I'm not gonna actually, you know what? For this one on your quiz, just giving you a heads up, I'm gonna write it out here. But on your quiz, this is one I'm gonna give you like a big block paragraph, and then somewhere near the beginning is gonna be a fill in the blank, like it'll be like an empty space, and you got to type in the type of bias. Okay, so it'll be very similar type question, and it'll be like it'll be this is the bias blank. Okay, and then it'll have some sort of description about what happens with that bias. Okay, so let's take a look at what that how we should word that. Okay, all right, so first and foremost, I'm thinking about it. This last one we decided was a convenient, okay, or a convenience sample, okay, because it's so convenient to pick the 10 trees close to the parking lot, right? That's super convenient. I'm going to park right here and pick these first 10 trees, okay? What happens when you do that? Let's see here. Oops. I would say you would get under or over coverage. Because remember, this convenient thing, you don't, it's considered a really bad sampling method because everything in that convenient location or the convenient way to sample, okay, a lot of times you either get like nothing you're looking for, or you might get like too many of what you're looking for that's not really representative of the total group. So that's why we call it under or over coverage, or just under coverage or over coverage. Okay, let's see here. Yeah, I'm gonna leave it like that for now. But basically, um, the reason why I just stated the trees might be at the top of the hill is you go back to the question itself, right? It says here that there's a bigger problem near the bottom of the hill. Okay, because there's a bigger problem at the bottom of the hill. Well, what if what if the parking lot? Okay, sorry, the trees might be at the top of the hill. I forgot to include one little note. Sorry. The trees might be at the top of the hill. Well, who cares about that? Well, it might matter because what if, sorry, the trees might be at the top of the hill. Oh my gosh. Uh, sorry guys. I apologize for that. I've changed that right there. That's the parking lot. I'm sorry. I meant to say the parking lot. Oh my gosh. Wake up. So under or over car. Thank you guys for being patient with me. All right. Under or over coverage. Why would it be a bias of under or over coverage? Because the parking lot might be the top of the hill. Okay, so here's my explanation. The parking lot might be at the top of the hill where we know already the biggest problem is at the bottom. Okay, so one more time. The farmer wants to know the extent of the damage to trees since the trees must be destroyed, blah, blah, blah. The trees are planted in horizontal rows on a hill, and the blight seems to be a bigger problem near the bottom of the hill. Okay, near the bottom of the hill. So they don't tell. So they tell us that information, but they don't tell us where the parking lot is for this question here, this part of the question here, which is important because that's what question 2 is about the whole parking lot thing. But they never tell us the location of the parking lot, so we can't assume the parking lot's at the bottom where the problem is, or wherever it might be. Okay, and we don't know if the top has a problem. So if you just select those, you might have under coverage. Or if you go to the top, maybe maybe the top and the bottom are messed up and the middle part is just fine. So we're not really quite sure what's happening. So the best thing to do would probably do some sort of systematic approach or a cluster approach or a stratified approach. Those three sound a whole lot better than just the convenient way to do it. Okay. Convenience is usually a really bad way to do a survey of something. Okay. So once again, if it's a convenient one, okay, the issue there is what? You get either under or over coverage with convenience. If you're kind of not sure exactly where to go with that, if you go back to our notes, okay, from the other day, I'm going to go ahead and show you guys the the notes from the other day. Let's do this. Okay, so if you were at our notes from a couple of days ago, we talked about a few different things and biases. So this could be very helpful to have as you guys are taking this quiz. Remember, it's all open note, okay, when you're doing this stuff. So we talked about different biases and whatnot. And the biases were mainly down here. Okay, under coverage is, you see how it's all related? Convenience sample is part of under coverage. Okay, non-response bias. Okay, non-response. Okay, voluntary response. There's the leading questions and social desirability. Okay, there are a bunch of other biases, but those are the ones that are going to be mainly covered in this chapter in this unit. Okay, there's like at least like 20 to 30 biases, if not more, that have been identified in different ways. Okay, so have those notes out when you're doing your quiz, please, please, pretty please. Okay, it's for your benefit. Okay, and you can even have the book, open notes. Okay, all right, moving on. There are 1,237 trees on the hill. Explain how to use a random digit table to select a simple random sample of 20 trees. Okay, an SRS. So they didn't describe an SRS up here. They want you to answer, how could you do an SRS down here for question 3? Then use the random digit table below to select the first 5 trees for your sample. All right. So we haven't quite done something like this. I've shown you guys briefly how to do this more advanced use of the random digit table. But here's how we're going to do it. Okay. So you see how there's a bunch of numbers here, right? It's random digit table, but we have 1,237 trees. So I just can't use digits 0 through 9. That would only be good for 10 trees. So what I have to do is I got to put these numbers into groups of 4. Okay. Oops. Okay, so I put those numbers in groups of 4, just like the trees up here, right? There's 1,237 trees. So the first tree, like let's say you can call it the one in the top left corner, top right corner, wherever you're at, we're close to the parking lot. At that point, doesn't really matter. But you're going to number the trees you're going to number the trees. What is happening with me today? number the trees 0, 0, 0, 1 to So the first thing I'm going to do is number the trees 0001 to 1237, okay, to 1237, 1237. And then I'm going to go through the random digit table, okay, and I'm going to select the first 5 trees that come up through looking at 4 digits at a time, okay. Anything that is not part of this set, so 0000, or anything basically bigger than 1238, I'm just going to ignore. I'm going to cross off and ignore. Okay. So select the first 5 trees ignore repeats and so I'm going to select the first 5 trees and I'm going to ignore repeats and numbers out of the range. Okay. So going through this, I'm going to go ahead and keep going. And I'm going to say, I guess it's going to repeat the same kind of pattern. Okay, so hopefully you guys can kind of see what I'm doing. This first one is 0490. That would mean 490. Is 490 part of my range? Yep. So I'm going to go through and find my first 5 trees. Okay. That one's good. Bad, 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 bad. Do you guys see why all those are bad? Okay. They're all bad. Oh my gosh. What happened there? You know what? For some reason, when I did the practice one, it's super weird. For some reason, it copied over 1. This should be a 4. So I'm looking right now at the other one, and it's saying 4. Like, what the heck is going on here? So either that's a misprint, or when I copied pasted it over to print it, it didn't print right. I'm looking at my other ones. Nope, it all says 1. That's super weird. I'll have to get that fixed. I don't know why it did that. So we're going to go ahead and go up to 4,000 now, because I was looking right now and I'm like, I don't think we can find 5 trees. I see 1 there, 1 there, 1 there. I would only see out of this grouping here, I would only see like 3 trees we could look at. But instead, I'm so sorry, it says 4,000. That should be a 4,000 there. All right. So that means this one would be good because 3,509 is within this range. I'm so sorry, guys. I feel like amateur hour with this thing. It's like, wait a minute. Like, why is that? Why did that say 1,000, but that says 4,000? I don't know. All right. The next one, let's keep going. This one then would be in range. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and just get rid of this 0. We don't need that 0. Let's just tree 490. And then that one's good. Okay, there's 3. That's out of range, 1,789. That one's good. Out of range, out of range, out of range. That one's good. So I've got these 5 trees. I've got tree number 490, tree number 3,509, tree number 1397, tree number 1789, and tree number almost 2,000, 1999. Okay. So there's 5 trees that selected, which seems like a good representation across the whole orchard or whatever. And I'm going to sample those 5 trees, and those 5 trees hopefully give me an idea of where else the blight, right, the infection of the trees might be somewhere else on the orchard. Okay, maybe it's in the middle, maybe it's on the side, I mean, it's top of the hill, I don't know, but a pretty decent little representation. Okay, this would be a simple random sample. Every tree had an equal chance to be selected. Okay, it's like pulling names out of a hat. I selected trees from a 4-digit section of the random digit table. Okay, so all this right here, okay, all that right there, this is worth 2 points on your actual quiz that you will have to type out. So it's recommended for this quiz to have out scratch paper and be doing this as you're right, like work it out yourself and then type out what you did. Okay. All right. Describe the kind of bias that might be present if the administration decides that instead of subjecting people to random testing, okay. Oh, what the heck? They're mixing 2 questions up. That's all right. Okay, so instead of doing the random testing, let's just say they drop grains of rice on the aerial photo of the hill and inspect the trees that had rice land on them. Okay, so you know what they did? They took like a map. Okay, so let's say you've got a map of here's all your trees. Okay, all your trees. That is okay. There are 4,237 trees, and this is a map. Believe it or not. Okay, you take some rice. How much rice did they say? Did they say how much rice? I don't know. Let's say 5 grains of rice. Drop it on the map of the trees, and wherever those 5 grains of rice land, boop 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 boop. That would be the places you check. Okay. So, what kind of bias might come up if you did that? So, this one at first seems like a simple one, so you can't really think of many biases with that. But if you think about it for a moment, remember a bias is all about where are the big errors going to come from? Like where is the systematic error? Where is the built-in error by doing something like this? Okay. And if it was simple, which it seems kind of simple at face value, simple means that every tree would have equal chance to be selected, right? If they drop grains of rice by doing this, okay? Now, from a picture of an orchard of trees, okay, is every tree going to be perfectly the same size? Okay, I can confidently say no. Okay, for something like nature to have like almost have over 4,000 trees, even if they're all the same plant, I'm pretty sure they're going to be a little bit different in different size. Therefore, when you're dropping the grains of rice, the bigger trees have a better chance of being selected. Okay, so that means the bigger trees are more likely going to get selected to be tested, and that might introduce an error, like maybe undercoverage or something like that. Okay, or overcoverage. I don't know. Okay. It says, okay. Okay, so here'd be my response. All right. I would say larger trees are more likely to be selected. There might be over or under coverage if large trees are more likely to have, or there might be over coverage if large trees are more likely to have the blight. Okay. Or the opposite. It might be under coverage if they're more likely to not have the blight. Okay. But I just gave one example of why that's bad. Okay. Once again, that is a systematic flaw to selecting your sample. Okay. Is by dropping rice on a map. Okay. That has the trees on it. If a tree is bigger, it's more likely going to have something on it. Okay. Like if I drop something on here, it's more likely to fall on the bigger piece than it is like a smaller piece. Okay. So if those bigger trees are more likely to get blight or less likely to get blight, or the blight, I guess how they word it, then you're going to get over or under coverage. Okay. So let's also ask the farmer to choose which trees he would like tested. Okay. So what else? If you ask somebody to select them, what do you guys think would happen? Well, I think what would happen was the farmer would say, hey, this one I know has it. This one I think has it. This one I think has it. And if somebody does that in this kind of situation, they're going to identify like all the trees that have it, and they're not going to really get a good indicator of which ones don't have it. Okay, they're not going to get necessarily a good sample. So in this case, it would be like kind of like the over coverage or under coverage to be so the farmer may select the trees that he knows have the blight. Okay, the results may be overestimated. So something along these lines is kind of what I'm looking for. Just know something like this will be multiple choice. Okay, or like a fill in the blank or a matching type stuff. The only one you actually have to type out is going to be with question 3. Okay, so make sure you're selecting the best answer for the other ones. If you're not quite sure where to go, or you see multiple stuff and maybe your exact answer in your head might be correct, okay, but you're kind of looking at the options you have, make sure you select the right option. Okay, or the best option for the situation. The only one you have to physically type out is going to be question 3. So once again, this will be like 4 points right here. Here's 2 points, and this will just be a fill in the blank. Okay, you got to type out what kind of bias it is. So 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so those are each worth 1 point. Those are all worth 1 point. That'll be 2 points, and fill in the blank will be 2 points. So as I said before, you guys finish your quiz. You should have the multiple choice answers for it, as far as like, oh, you got 7 out of 10. It'll say something like that until I go in and manually type in this. Okay. And then this one, for where you type this in, I have it set so that whatever you type in, it should kind of check it. Okay. With some small room for error. Whatever word you type in, I kind of have it set for like spelling error coverage and things like that, whatever. So I'm going to also manually check that one. So this might come back, number 2, what you type in, it might come back as being like, oh, you got it wrong. However, when I manually go and check this one, I'm going to manually check that question too. Just know it's going to be a different kind of test. Okay, it'll be a different situation, different numbers, but the same format, the same layout, the same ABCD, question 2, question 3, question 4 being 2 parts. It's going to be the same exact setup. It'll just be a completely different scenario. Okay. And in fact, them talking about people that random testing, that's actually kind of like a hint at what it's going to be. Okay. It's going to be a business doing drug testing on their employees. So how do they select the employees for drug testing? That's what it's going to be about. Okay. All right. So I'm going to stop the recording now. You guys can watch this at your leisure.